Hello everybody, welcome back to Waffles RC. Today we're getting back on the 4Runner, and not in the way that you think, because last you saw, we got this to here. I've been trying to figure out this steering. I stared at it for about 4 hours yesterday, trying a couple of different things, and I cannot for the life of me figure out how to make this steering work on this particular setup with the portals. I'm just having issues. So the way that I found so far to fix the steering is just going to do a solid axle. Realize a couple of things. One, this series is not doing very good because I'm doing a lot of talking and off camera trying to figure out how to make this thing work. It's not really resonating with a lot of people. So what I'm going to do is go back to the basics. I'm not going to get rid of this frame or the suspension or any of that stuff. This is all staying until I can figure it out. You guys have given me a lot of good ideas, but remember, I do most of my work with a cutoff wheel. I don't have a 3D printer, don't have the fanciest drill bits, don't have any of that stuff. So until I can figure out how to make that work correctly, that's going back, mainly because I want an RC to drive. And I feel like I've just wasted too much time trying to get this to work, so I'm going to keep it and keep trying to figure out ways. So this will go under another vehicle, but for now, we're going to go back to the basics. Going to make a frame, do solid axles, put it under the 4Runner. I have everything that I need now to make this work and drive. So that's what we're going to do. So for all the people that are new here, this is basically going to be me showing you how to make a frame for a solid axle. We're going to do it just like that one. It's actually the same axles. It's just they're black instead of silver like those. Going to have lots of travel, and we're going to get this 4Runner working. We'll start with the basics of make a frame. All right, so I've learned my lesson from drawing on my table to not draw on the table anymore. So starting from the basics, I'm going to take that piece of metal and the 4Runner body. We're going to figure out center line for our wheelbase. So we'll do our proper accurate measuring there. And let's push this one a little forward. Yep. That's the line that's for the rear axle. There's our line for the front axle, rear axle. That's our wheelbase. I'm going to bring the body back. I may want to bring that one in a bit more. Let's bring it there. So what those lines are for, it's for the frame rail. So I want it to start to kick up here. Probably on the rear I'll have it go back a little further. The front, have it kick up here, then level off there so that way the frame stays relatively behind the body. Doesn't have to be perfectly behind the body, so it's going to go that way, kick down, come along here. So that's what all those lines are for. So that is the basic idea for the frame, or for the frame rail. So I'm just going to make 2 of those frame rails, then we'll go from there. Here's my frame rail. Just nice and simple. Cut it all out into individual pieces. Did it this way because, like I said, going back to basics. This is how I built pretty much most of these. Well, how I built that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. Now that was all flat. Put it on my lines, got it angled, so now I'm going to weld this together. So the trick that I use to make sure that this frame rail is going to be the same as the other frame rail, so when I cut one piece out, I just duplicate it. Make sure that I have the right ones. So I cut 2 pieces to make sure that they'll all match up side to side. So now I'm going to tack all this together, make sure it's straight, then weld it all up. just like that, there's our frame rails. About half an hour's worth of work, because I've done this a few times, so gotten pretty good at it. Fits up on our drawing, pretty close. So now I'll make some crossbars to go across everything, kind of hold everything in place. Once we get our width, which will be our measurement, which I'm going to do from outside here to outside of here, that's where I want the shocks. And then the control arms will go inside of there. But I want the frame to be a little bit skinnier than where the shocks need to go on this. So far I haven't used a tape measure on any of this, as you've seen, but for this I actually will use a tape measure. So the measurement from this outside to outside of these mounts right here was 4.5. So I'm going to make this probably 4.25 to give me some room for the shocks to be able to move. So when you're doing the crossbars, take into consideration the thickness of your frame rail, which this is 1/2 inch. So you have 2 of them, which if my math is correct, which sometimes it is, that makes 1 inch. So make it 4.25, 3 3/4 across on each one. And that will be the width of our frame. For those of you playing along at home, yes, you are correct. My measurement was wrong. No, I did not notice it until after I put everything together, and I certainly didn't have to redo it. Anyhow, moving on. Got the axle, got the links, made some tabs down here for both the rear lower and the front lower. Locking up the rear, got the rears here. Is there a proper geometry to this to make sure that it all works correctly? Yes. Do I know it? I'll be honest with you, no. I don't know the geometry. I just know I want the pinion angle to stay the same all the way through the travel. Maybe have a little bit of tilt, not too much. I'm just using whatever links I have to make it all work. The way I set up my trucks is pretty much the opposite of what the competition trucks are. That's because I like to have a lot of suspension travel, which is why I use very long shocks. People have left in the comments that I need to use shorter shocks. Well, in the real world, with every off-road truck that I've ever built, the goal is to have as many tires on the ground as possible. I have noticed with the competition trucks, yes, they lift tires quite often. They do flex pretty well, but they lift tires quite often, but that helps keep them grounded. And that's to each their own. I like a lot of travel. That's why all of mine have very long shocks. Yes, mine are top heavy. They do lean quite a bit because of the amount of travel that I have. But I can articulate quite a lot more than the other ones can. But it is, once again, to each their own. You want to put 90 mils or 80 mils on here, you do you. I run 110s. It's what I like. Okay, I was worried that I wouldn't have enough triangulation in there, but well, now it's stuck, but you know what I mean. It's never going to go that far. So now the pinion angle as the truck rises stays about level. Not perfectly, but once again, it's not going to ever travel that far. Maybe that far in total. So rear is good. Now let's do the front. So I made these bottom tabs here based on the links, lower links that I used for the front and for the rear. So they'll both mount here. And then for the uppers, I mount the lower down here, get the axle where I want it, get the pinion angle where I want it, then basically look where the upper arm is going to land, make a tab, test it out. That's essentially how I do this. So I'll show you. I'll mount this front with the lowers on, and then me guessing on the other stuff. All right, welcome to a new day. It's been many days since I've worked on this. I have the axle in. Yes, pinion is too high, still have to adjust it. The box of gloves is underneath it to simulate almost ride height. So for the front links, I decided to go with a 3-link with a track bar. Reason why I went with the track bar idea, I was going to do a servo on axle for the steering, but I went with the track bar idea because it was easier to figure out and had nothing to do with the fact that I couldn't get this to get the links to triangulate like the rears are. So it had nothing to do with that, and that I fought it for like 2 days trying to get it to work and couldn't. So to say the least, this thing has been a very big pain, but I'm determined to get it done. So if I have to do steering on the servo on frame instead of servo on axle, that's what I'm going to do, because I want this 4Runner to run. So now that I have it at near its ride height, it's going to go up just a little bit more. I'm going to make a bracket for the track bar here after I level this axle out, and then start working on the shocks. But I'll show you once I get the bracket on why I do it the way I do, so that way for people who don't know can figure out how to get this done correctly so that all the suspension will articulate correctly. So here's the track bar mount. I welded up there. I have 2 adjustment points in case I need to do more adjusting than what I have with it already. So got 1 mount down here on the axle, 1 mount up here on the frame. Now the key to getting this to function correctly is you want your tie rod, what goes from the steering servo down to the steer on the wheels. You want both of these to be the same length and parallel with each other wherever you mount them. So when I mount this servo, I'm going to have to mount it so that it's way down here, but that's perfectly fine. That's what I adjusted everything for. So you want these to be in line with each other and the same length as each other. So I know that these are both the same length as each other, and I have adjustments on both of them. Before I get the steering servo mounted, I'm going to get it to sit on these shocks. I went with these shocks because they are, like I said earlier, 110 millimeters. And I'm not a fan of gold, but it's close to the same-ish yellow that's on the 4Runner. That's not a 4Runner. You get it. The 4Runner has Old Man Emu shocks on it, so they're yellow. And since I want this to look like our 4Runner, that is why I went with these. I'm gonna make some tabs up here for the fronts. Get these right here. The rears, got to do the same thing, but I'm gonna have them angled to get more articulation out of the rear. So I'm just gonna make quick little tabs, stand up right here on the frame, and get some spacers to push the shock out, adjust everything, and then we'll move on to steering. Okay, got all the shocks mounted. As you can see, got them spaced out. It is sitting all the way up, but remember, there's still much more weight to go on this thing with the motor, transmission, battery, steering servo. So that's all going to come down, sit about like that. So as you see, I have the servo on there. Bent the steering arm just to give it a little bit more angle for all the drop. So now I'm going to make a mount for the servo, and I'll show you how you want your tie rod and the track bar to be in line. I'll show you how I mount this thing to make sure that it does. Here is the servo mounted. Made a plate that goes across, 2 plates that go down. Only have 2 bolts holding it because I got to take it all apart anyhow. So we have the steering arm off of the servo, the track bar mounted up here. You want them to be about the same gap from there to that one as it is from there to that one. Now the reason why any of that is important is because, and you want them in line, even though this has a bend in it, you're just drawing a straight line. So it is roughly in line with the other one. The reason why you want to do that, dropped all the way down, but as it goes down, the steering does not turn as the axle moves side to side, because that's what that track bar does, is it moves the axle side to side. So you want your steering to be the exact same length. As you see with the tires, they do not turn as I go up and down. That's why you want to do it like that. And yes, the steering arm does hang down pretty low, but I need it down that low because of the height difference between the mount on the knuckle and the mount on the axle, to the mount on the frame, to the mount on the pitman arm. That's a generalized version of why you want to do all this stuff, is so that as it moves, the steering will not turn without you turning it. That's the whole goal. Okay, so we got to this point. Now, got to mount our transmission and our transfer case, all of which came out of the IFS truck. So we need all of this in here. So I got to find the right spot to put the motor and the transfer case to where the drive shafts will meet up perfectly and that the motor will be nice and straight, or the transmission and the motor, whatever. We got to figure out a mount for this, which is going to be the same thing. Just make some metal tabs, use this stock mount that came with the transmission, and use that, find a spot for it, but that's going to wait for another day. So we will come back to it, but for you, it'll be just 1 second. And we're back. Got the motor transmission mounted. As you can see, just made some little tabs, weld off the frame, go to the stock mount that came with this transmission. It's just a lot easier. Just barely enough room in there, so that way the motor isn't sitting on that metal plate, and I can still remove it if I need to. Which, haven't had any issues yet, but you know, things happen. So now, gotta get transmission mounted somewhere there. So I'm just going to get a piece of metal, bend it off, have it come up. I'm going to mount it like this because the transmission's up so high. If I would have put the transmission further back and lower down, like everybody I'm sure is saying that I should, that would have put the transfer case way back here. Now I could have done rear mounted, but 4Runners are front engined, so going for scale points. Yeah, with a drop transmission, but you know, whatever. So, gonna mount it just like this. That drive shaft goes up to there. This will be here in the middle, and then put drive shafts down to it. Got the mount made, holes are drilled. That's where I go when I go around the corners. I got a drill press over there. A lot easier. For those who don't know, easiest way I've found, the holes drilled exactly where you need them for something. You put a piece of painter's tape on it, press down, mark it with your pen, and take it off. Put it on your piece of material, center punch, my favorite tool, and then drill the holes out. If you mark it correctly, then you get perfect holes. Now you can just wham it on there and call it good. Okay, here are the drive shafts, front and rear. Luckily, the ones that I ordered for that one back there are the right length, thanks to wheelbase. But they are long enough to be able to go through all the suspension movements, not be too long or too short. So, quite happy about that. And everybody turns just how I wanted it. Well, just how you want any RC, honestly. You want it to drive it. Okay, so there is all of that. So now the last parts of this, for now, are going to be the side pieces, so that way we have a place to mount our power switch and to make rock sliders. And then we have to make body mounts. I'm just going to do posts through the body. I know it doesn't look as good, but it's easier to get to the battery and switch it out. And then I have to make a battery tray. Probably going to do it somewhere about right here. Yeah, we can do the battery about right there, just right above all this stuff. So, and I have to do, now this isn't something that you have to do, but I'm going to just make a piece of metal that goes across here, just as a little skid plate for the reasons of, because I can. So we'll do that bottom skid plate real quick, then work on the body mounts, get the body mounted on here to figure out our sliders. Did the skid plate. Luckily, I had a piece of metal just big enough, and now we have a skid plate to protect pretty much nothing but skid plate. Slightly off topic, I have this shirt. Really like this shirt. Somehow, a hole got in it. So, there's only one way to fix that. Okay, solved that problem. Can't look trashy having a hole in the sleeve. It just doesn't look right. Gotta look classy. So now we've evened it out. We made it look good. I'm ready to go in public. But that's not what anybody is here for, is fashion advice from me. So, get back to RCs. Okay, so we have the body. all I'm going to do for the back is just make a hoop that goes from the frame up towards the top, then back down to the frame. For the front, I'm going to do the same thing, and then put some posts through it, and then you put your clips in, and there you go. So for the hoop, for the body mount, this is all I do. I don't know if you can see that very well. There you go. Just put two 90s in it, make it longer than it needs to be. I'm going to cut this whole end off, and I make it the width of the frame, just like that. So now I can slide it and adjust it where I need it to be for the body, mark it, weld it. As you can see, it is long. When I do that radius, I do it a little bit smaller than the width of the frame. That way I can pinch it on there and it will slide down. I can make my adjustments, get it sitting where I want to. Right now it's all at full extension. Most of these bodies will come with little dents for where you would put body posts. So all I have to do is get that in place, center the body, cut those holes, then make my own posts for the top or for the back. Front has them like right here, but I don't know if I'm going to do them there. Just want to get everything sitting level, get your height from the frame to the body, because you can adjust the suspension for everything else. So you want the body sitting level on the frame. Front still has to come up, so I got to raise the back up a little bit. So I'm going to push that up, mark it, weld it, repeat the process for the one on the front, and then start working on sliders for it. Lunch break. Got the back one on, got the front ones on. Did it this way instead of that way, just to give it more protection, I guess you would say. Got to protect the motor in case of a rollover. So the way I make the actual body posts is I take the same material and I drill holes through it, and then I'm going to cut them, and I'll have 4 body posts. So the way I got these holes drilled in here on a round object was very difficult, and with 3 different drill bits, because I kept breaking them. I'll cut these into individual pieces, mount them right here, weld them up, and then we'll set the body on once it cools down so it doesn't melt the body. There are little posts. So now, if I did it correctly, gotta make that one. Oh, there we go. A little bit of force, but there we are. Still have to cut this wheel arch out, the rear ones a bit more. I think the fronts will clear just fine. And remember, it's still all the way up. I gotta take these apart, grease them up, and once I have the full weight on it, then it'll sink down to its normal ride height. This bar back here, I'm also gonna do some kickers off of it just to strengthen it up for when my wife rolls it, and when I roll it. Honestly, that's the reality. I'm gonna roll it too. Now, put the body back on, make flat pieces right here, so that way I can put the electronics on it, and it'll be a spot for the sliders that I'm going to make for the body. I'll match the ones on that when they get here in a couple weeks. Okay, here are the starts of the sliders. Just very basic. I'm going to put sheet metal underneath here, so that way, got both sides done. Sheet metal will go underneath here, so that way we have a spot to put our electronics. Battery is going to go back here. This will go into the receiver right here, and then our power switch. I like to put the power switches somewhere about right here, so that way I can just reach in through the body without taking the body off to turn it on and off. I may also put it in the front. I don't know, just how I feel whenever I get it there, but I like having a flat spot to mount the receiver and sliders for protection. But there's one slight issue with trying to finish this. If we look in here on our welder, I'm out of wire. So I believe that's where we're gonna have to end it. In this video, we did get pretty far. Got the frame all built out, suspension on, motor, transmission, transfer case, drive shafts, body mounted. And as you can see, the sliders just go right underneath the body. That'll also give us something for the body to sit on. Still, like I said, got to cut those out. And And also, when you're making sliders, if you are making your own frame, when you're making sliders, cut the outside slider the same length as the other side. So cut 2 of them at once and then mount them in the same spot. So there's a body line right here at the point of this one. If we turn it around while breaking my wrist, that is right at the body line as well. They are the same length on both sides. So I'm very happy with how this is turning out, but I'm out of welding wire, so what can we do now? This right here is why I love my neighborhood. Gotta have fun everywhere. So I know that this video has taken 2 weeks to make, but you know, life happens. Got other stuff that I have to do other than just build RCs every weekend. We're just going to keep going as best as we can. And we've made really good progress with it. Hopefully by the next video, this thing will be up and driving. The body is going to go off to Miss Anna, and that will get painted because apparently I don't know how to pick paint colors correctly since I'm building this for my wife, and this is not the same color as that. Even though I tried the whole, if you look into the sun and squint your eyes and put them up next to each other, they look close. Didn't work, but it was worth a try. So Miss Anna will take care of that, and we'll get all the accessories on it, but hopefully by the next video, we will have it up and running. So from Waffles RC, thank you all for watching. Thank you for bearing with me for the 1 week without a video. We will see you on the next video.